I'm going to do something that I have never done before this morning. And what that is I am essentially going to present to you a narrative form of the church budget for 2015. And for those of you who like lines and hard numbers, you're not going to be happy, I'm sure. But the reason I want to present it in a narrative form is because lines and hard numbers tend not to tell the whole story. They tend to split the story up in such a way that we think one part of the budget can be handled without another part of the budget. But I wanted to talk about that, and actually, it was last year, a little bit later in the year, that I thought I really needed to do this, and it was because I was listening to a news segment when the last year's budget was being presented, and the person that was being interviewed said about the United States budget, said, you don't have to necessarily like the budget. He said, but what is important to note is that when the president presents the budget, he is really presenting a mission statement. And I really liked that. I liked how it was presented in terms of the United States budget, whether you agree with the president or not. I don't want you to get stuck there, because I know many of you will, because of the president, who he is. So I really don't want you to get stuck there. I just want you to hear that even the world recognizes that the numbers, really, if you get stuck on the numbers, you miss the fact that it is a mission statement. And so we're going to talk about this budget in church budget from a narrative perspective, because it is our mission statement. It says an awful lot about us, about what we hold dear, about what we think the Lord has called us to. And so I want you to see this morning as a presentation of our mission statement for 2015. And Carl is going to read the scripture for us.
Reading from Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 5 through 9. See, I have taught you decrees and laws as the Lord my God commanded me, so that you may follow them in the land you are entering to take possession of it. Observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding to the nations, who will hear about all these decrees and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. What other nation is so great as to have their gods near them the way the Lord our God is near us whenever we pray to him? And what other nation is so great as to have such righteous decrees and laws as this body of laws I am setting before you today? Only be careful and watch yourselves closely, so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen, or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and to their children after them.
I wanted to address this portion. Actually, I should have said, and so I'm going to say at this point, you'll see the pictures rolling before you are going to look particularly at the education ministry of our church, because we are following our mission statement to learn about Christ, to live out Christ, to share Christ with the world. And so I wanted to start there, and I picked that particular scripture because it is a reminder of how important our tradition goes clear back into Israel, has understood education, has understood teaching our children about the faith. And I think it's something that we are losing some sense of importance in. But I would challenge you to take a look at the world and see how the world understands that it is necessary to teach the children when they're young the things that we want them to learn. It shouldn't be make any surprise to you at all that some of the latest pictures we have seen is that group, that radical extremists called ISIS or ISIL, whatever. The latest pictures we've seen of them is they're having young children with guns in their hands, teaching them how to kill. They know that if they get them really early, they've got them for life. We, however, have kind of taken a stance in our world that while we think education in school is important, we'll make sure our children go to school every day, even if they're a little bit sick. We know it's that important. And yet, members of the Church of Jesus Christ at the same time have said, we'll let our children decide if they want to be a part of the faith or not. It is a tragic mistake that the church has made over the last 20, 30 years, that if we really hold the faith to be important, then we will do more to make sure that our children have cut their teeth on the education of the church. And so I wanted to say something about the Sunday school. We have an average attendance in our Sunday school of 138 people over the course of the year. That takes the ups and downs in place. That's not bad, but it reflects about a 12%, 13% decrease in the children in our Sunday school. It also says something about us in terms of our budgeting. I once heard a person say that I don't know why we have to help pay for the Sunday school of the children. That's the world we live in. We got what we got, we like what we like, but the truth of the matter is the Christian community has always been called to be a part of that which takes care of the little ones around us. I would like to point out that the Sunday school offering to the church last year was $5,400, but an important element to state there is that at the same time, we have budgeted $7,200 to cover curriculum, only curriculum. That doesn't count the fact that we have an education person who oversees our education ministry. And in order to present a budget that we thought was balanced, we actually had to cut 5 hours out of education pastor's salary this year so that we could make budget. The question I want to ask you is that acceptable? Is it acceptable to make that move in order to have a balanced budget? Because we've had difficulty in the last few years of actually making that budget balanced. At the same time, we should note that we had an average of 150 kids in VBS this year. There is only money that comes in through the church pays for that. That alone costs $3,000. But there are some really exciting things that I want to say under education. I have to move pretty fast, so forgive me if I keep on going. Some exciting things I want to say about that. When we look at adult Bible studies, youth participation is actually up 313%. Young adult participation, in part because we didn't have much for young adults, we now do, is up 70%. All adult Bible studies, all adults, people who are in Bible studies or in accountability groups of all kinds, is up 218%. It's incredible figures when you think about it. But if you really want to understand where this is, there is the budgeted figure for our education ministry. Now, mind you, I really had hoped to also have something in your bulletin that you could kind of follow along, but I was not able to actually get that done, and it probably won't even be done next Sunday, but hopefully the following Sunday, you'll see that with a little more detail in it. But we take, what this mission statement about us says, is that we take education ministry in Gravel Hill very, very seriously. Now, this number does include salaries. And like I said, when I get that to you, that will break that down a little bit more. But the reason we didn't break it down that way is because of our tendencies. It is what we tend to do, is we tend to believe ministry can happen if we didn't pay people. It's an amazing thing that happens, and that's why I'm presenting for you this budget that is a budget following our mission statement. Again, I'm going to ask Carl to read the scripture for us.
Reading from 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 9. The end of all things is near. Therefore be alert and of sober mind, so that you may pray. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling.
Offer hospitality without grumbling. We also take living out Christ in our community very seriously. And under this category comes mostly our worship. It's the community living out Christ here. It covers some other things, but primarily it's what we do in worship. Historically, worship has been understood to be one of the most important aspects of the life of the Christian. It is because it is hard for us out in the world to live into the call that Christ has called us to. But one of the most important aspects of the gathered community in worship is that we come together with like-minded people with like hearts, so that we can be reinforced in the community of Christ. And I am very happy to report that when I listen to people talk about what goes on in their own churches and in terms of what goes on in worship, that Gravel Hill is able to provide one of the best worship experiences anywhere. It has to do with the fact that we do believe that a primary core, not a secondary or tertiary, but a primary core of who we are is people who worship the divine God. Amen? And it's people who come together and lift up their voices in the worship of the divine God. It is not something that we take lightly, and I think it's not something that we should in our lives take lightly. However, there's growing evidence in our world that many in the Church of Jesus Christ take it very lightly. For attendance is nothing like it used to be. I remember we went years as a growing up kid and never missed a Sunday, where now we know that attendance habits are, if people attend twice a month, they feel themselves in good relationship with the Church of Jesus Christ and in good relationship actually with the Lord Jesus Christ. So I thought I wanted to lift up a couple of figures for us to help us understand even who we are as a worshiping community. In the first service, for instance, over the course of the entire year, we addressed 6,196 people. Now, I hope you know what that means. That means you were counted, each of you that were here, 52 times. But it's easier to take a look at the total numbers so that we understand costs that are associated with the total numbers. Now, unfortunately, that is down 1,100 members from the year before. That's only talking about this service. It says something about who we are, and hopefully it says something about what we need to be about in the Church of Jesus Christ. Even though we were down 1,100 in aggregate numbers, the cost for this service alone, it's an average of 119, by the way, is $67,749. Hard to believe, isn't it? But that includes electric, it includes heating, it includes salaries, it includes budgeted for worship material. But that is not the total for all of our services. That's the total for this service here. And that means, by the way, that means if your gift is less than $570 per person, not per envelope, per person, then not only are you not supporting the overall ministry of the church, you're not supporting the worship service in this first service. The second service had an aggregate number of 6,395, and that was an increase of 1,185 over the year before. Average attendance in that service then is 123, and that service cost $59,648. Is that an amazing number or not? Does that shock anybody? It shocked me as I took a look at that. And as we take a look at the third service then, there was a small decrease, 324 over the year before, but an aggregate of 9,338, or an average attendance of 180. in that service with the same cost, $59,648. It is an amazing thing when we recognize what it actually takes to provide top-notch worship, to provide that which a lot of people say when I talk about what we do here, you guys are able to do that? Yes, we're able to do that, and the reason, because we think it is a core of who we are, worshiping the divine God, and it should not be done in a shipshod manner, should it? Shouldn't it be done in the best we can possibly do it when we walk before the God of the universe, this transcendent God? Under this comes our ministry of hospitality, and I know that this has been a difficult area for some people, but it reflects one of the major changes in the culture around us. And the major change that it reflects is this, is that not only is there not just a average or non-thought about the church, that the church now actually has a fairly negative connotation in the world. And that we know that if we are to reach the world, that the number one ministry that we have to do right is the ministry of hospitality. I was amazed here a week or so ago. I guess it was the last time Sean spoke, and I had the opportunity to be out there in hospitality a little bit earlier. It was absolutely filled with people who were sharing with one another. And it is an amazing thing. We're doing it right. But it comes with a cost when we look at the ministry of the church. Most important for us that we need to come to, I'll talk about in a minute, is the realization that also reaching people in this world is something that we have to do outside of the bounds of the church. But worship, the ministry of worship and hospitality, costs $187,117. Again, when I broke that down, it was astounding to me because we tend to look at bottom lines. We tend to look at raw numbers. But I want to ask you, if we did cut the budget this year, but I could offer a budget that is even less expensive. I really could. I could do it by, lower the budget by $67,749 if I stopped this first service. Is that acceptable? Is that acceptable? Okay, I hope not. Because if only 3 of you don't care, we're going to save $67,000. Is it acceptable to cut out the worship service that's growing the most? So, it says something about us, don't we? We do believe worshiping God is important, right? Ministry comes with support issues. Lastly, I want to talk about sharing Christ with the world.
Reading from Luke chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
You know what? It has been said that if you learn about Christ and you worship Christ, but that's all you do, you have something, but you do not have the Church of Jesus Christ. That the Church of Jesus Christ has historically had 3 legs to it. That is learning, that is living, and the third leg to it is sharing Christ with the world. And that is the last part of our mission statement. I hope at the very least, because it's been twice now already this year, that I've had our mission statement in the bulletin. Our mission statement is that we learn about Christ, but that learning doesn't stop there. Learning and doing nothing is useless. We take what we learned about Christ and we live that learning out, first of all, in the Christian community, and second of all, we move to the world around us. And I broke this one down a little bit because under sharing Christ, basically, we need to talk first about missions, the missions element of ARM, and secondly, the outreach and membership care of the ARM that comes under sharing Christ with the world. And I could go on in this section. I really could. about the sharing of Christ and what this church does, but it includes such things under that as the bazaar, the heifer project, and the Christmas tree carrying. And you know the things that I'm talking about that come under the heading of missions. It includes PAC here in town, and how we are a part of that, and the caring cupboard, and how we continue to be a part of what Jesus' call, he lifts up in Luke 14, is his sense of call, and that followers of Christ are to live into Jesus' sense of call. And so first of all, I wanted to talk about our missions element, because I'm not sure that we tend to understand it that well. When you look at who we are as a missions church, and you take into account all of those things that actually support our ability to be in mission to the world, that our missions budget is $163,079. Are you proud of that? Okay, 2 of you, 3 of you are proud of that. Are the rest of you here? Are you proud of that? I hope you are proud of that. But I do also want to note that when I gathered up these figures, because of the way the bazaar works, and even the heifer project and some of the other ministries, the way they work is those figures aren't even tabulated into this yet, because they would only be tabulated once we know exactly what has come in and exactly what goes out. So even this figure will grow to somewhere around $180,000 of what we put into, the effort that we put into missions, because we understand that a church that is not involved in the world is a group of people, maybe having a good time, but it is not the Church of Jesus Christ. Outreach and membership care includes things like Community Day and all of the community events that Tony makes sure that we are a part of. If you get out of your houses on almost anything that happens in town, you will note that Tony has had someone, either himself or some volunteer there, to make sure that the ministry of Gravel Hill is noted in everything that happens in the community of which we are a part of. But that figure, just for membership care, is, and it's different than what's on here, and I'm not sure why. No, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. It is $163,000, and no, I've done something wrong there. $105,524. Sorry about that. I made a mistake on my notes. That taking care, and that includes our visitation ministry in hospitals and people who are in nursing homes and people who we visit in their homes, comes under that heading. But it is $105,524 for a total of $268,603, or a grand total of our budget of $268,603. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? The ministry of the Church of Jesus Christ, of what we are a part of. But I also should include for you then that we do have, I should have had this slide put up for you of income figures, but I think I'm out of time. You will get in your bulletins, probably, as I said, not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday, an actual narrative budget that will include both our expense side and our income side. So you can take a look at the ministry of the Church of Jesus Christ, but it will also be in a narrative form so that we see, that we understand that such things like this facility right here, if we didn't have some place to come together as a gathered community, we wouldn't have that cost. But we do have this incredible gift, don't we? That God has really blessed us with. And I would further say that if you would like a hard budget, just call the church office. Just call the church office, and they will be glad to print one out for you. You can take a look at the individual numbers as you look at the ministry of the church. But I would submit to you that these numbers that I have lifted up about us says something about how we hold the importance of carrying out the ministry of Jesus Christ in this place called Gravel Hill. Thank you.
We're going to sing the first verse of He Touched Me. Just one verse, Donna. Please stand if you're able.
Shackled with a heavy burden, 'neath the
And I'm not sure it's ever the case, but I hope that we, at least in the church, when we hear numbers, we think ministry. I hope that's the case. I know too often it isn't. And it is amazing how we can talk about numbers as if they do not touch lives and livelihoods. And I would like us to hear, when we talk about numbers, that you hear the ministry of the Church of Jesus Christ. Because I am proud to be a part of the church called Gravel Hill for what we are a part of. There are a lot of churches I could never say that about, but I can say that about Gravel Hill. And I hope that you also are proud of the ministry of which you are a part of, and would not happen without your faithfulness. In the name of God the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Darn light. Darn candle didn't want to.